Hello, everybody. Welcome into Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Tuesday, November 26th. I hope everybody's having an incredible day so far. We have a big NFL show for you. Obviously going to cover, of course, the Monday Night Football game, but of course, every Tuesday we do our power rankings 32-1. It was a tough week this week to do the power rankings, I'm not going to lie to you, especially in that middle section from about 7 to 17 or 18 was maybe the toughest that I've had to do all year. But we'll go over all of them as well as winners and losers from week 12. But before we get into any of that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Tuesday, November 26th. But like I was saying, we are going to start off our show today with some NFL power rankings. And starting off right away at number 32, it's the Jacksonville Jaguars. The Jaguars were idle this week. They were on a bye. Still, they did not make a coaching change, something that I'm a little bit surprised by, although as time continues to march on with this organization, I am less and less surprised with every week that Doug Peterson continues to be there. Doug Peterson went out and said that he made some changes in-house, not going to come out and say what they are. Positive news, Trevor Lawrence, their star quarterback, franchise quarterback, apparently had a couple of practices in there. There were reports that he was potentially going to be out for the season, and we've seen how disastrous this squad has been with 2 weeks under Mac Jones. The difference is crazy. They score 6.5 points per game in the 2 weeks that they've had Mac Jones. That is less than a touchdown per game. That is crazy. 13 total points. Not good enough. Obviously, they weren't winning many games with Trevor Lawrence, but the offense was at least able to move. They were able to hit the weapons on the outside. The running game was at least a little bit effective at times, right? Without him, this is the worst team in football. That defense is not good enough, and there are not a lot of shining moments for this team. The Jacksonville Jaguars are the worst team in football, number 32. A very close second worst team in football, though, and that is the New York Giants. Honestly, you could very easily convince me to switch where I have these two. I almost did. When I go through these lists, I flipped them back and forth about 30 times before I eventually decided to put the Giants at 31. I just think overall, the level of talent on this New York Giants team is at a slightly higher caliber than it is on the Jacksonville Jaguars. You take a look at especially that defensive line, and it hurts that they don't have Azeez Ojulari anymore, but this is a team that is very, very talented. Tommy DeVito did not work. Obviously, getting rid of Daniel Jones is a big story, and the Giants organization is currently getting crucified, as it should be, for its mismanagement of the entire organization, not just Saquon Barkley, but everything that they have done over about the last 10 years has really come and hit them in the face. It hasn't worked. They need a change. The Giants are near the bottom of the league in almost every single metric. Offense, defense, special teams. They need a switch now. We'll see what happens on Thanksgiving, but I'm not very optimistic for that game. At number 30, we have the Raiders. They've now lost both of their quarterbacks this season. They're down to Desmond Ridder. I don't know what they're going to do. Aiden O'Connell apparently could come back this week from his broken thumb. Maybe this is just perfect timing. Gardner Minshew wasn't playing the greatest football, but neither was Aiden O'Connell when he was healthy and when he was in there. Gardner Minshew won the job over Aiden O'Connell anyway. This is a Raiders team that is just bad. It's not going to get any better this season. Brock Bowers for Rookie of the Year, potentially. I think that's a thing we should start having. I think he's definitely in second place, at least. He's definitely above Bo Nix. But ahead of Jaden Daniels, I don't know. But this is a Raiders team that, again, it just doesn't have a lot of hope. Tank for next season, get a quarterback, figure it out. These bottom three teams are just leagues worse than everybody else right now. At number 25, we get into that, number 29, we get into that next tier. The New England Patriots kick it off there. And I hate to punish them that much for a loss, a division loss, most importantly, but a division loss where Drake May just continues to do everything he can, Herculean efforts to keep them in games despite the rest of the roster just not holding up. That offensive line is terrible. We all knew it was going to be. That defense is awful. They don't have anything. But Drake May continues to show that he is a guy that they can build around. And next season and the next couple seasons after that are not going to be fun for him. But at least the Patriots have hope. At least the Patriots have a quarterback that they can build around. And I'm not sure if those other three teams can say the same thing. At 28, we have the Dallas Cowboys. A huge win for the Cowboys. Stopped their skid, continues the Washington Commanders skid. It was a crazy way to end that game. 2 kick return touchdowns in the final 3 minutes for them by 2 different players, one on an onside kick. That one probably they should not have gone in on. They could have ended the game a lot more comfortably if they had just gone down after recovering that onside kick. Doesn't matter. They got a win. It was a huge win for the Dallas Cowboys against a division rival on the road, most importantly. That is a huge game for Cooper Rush, and maybe they can get something going. Their defense on third down and long has been incredible as of late, although that's not much of an accomplishment. Your defense should be good on third down and long in the NFL. The Cowboys have been better. They really have. They're still not great, and they're too injured to really turn this season around. I'm worried. Reports are that Mike McCarthy might get extended, and that would be a huge mistake for the Dallas Cowboys to make. I hope for their sake that they do not make that, and someone stops Jerry Jones from extending Mike McCarthy. But the Dallas Cowboys, they move up a little bit after a big win to 28. At 27, we have the Titans, and I know they got a huge win against a division rival, against the Houston Texans, a game that they needed, a second game in a row where Will Levis has actually looked pretty good. This is a huge win for them. The offense was working. The defense wasn't working as much, but they came up with huge stops when they needed to get those huge stops, and they beat a Houston Texans team that is struggling right now. They're sliding pretty far. They're not having the kind of season that you expected a Houston Texans team to have. For now, the Titans still have a lot of issues. They're still near the bottom of the league, but this is a huge win for momentum. It kind of takes them out of where they wanted to be if they wanted to get a quarterback, but as far as riding with Will Levis, I think he's starting to show you something that maybe it's not time to give up on him yet. There's a lot of problems with this Titans roster, and I don't want to put it all on Will Levis, although for sure he does have some kinks he needs to fix. He's a gunslinger, but he doesn't quite have that touchdown upside that a guy like Jordan Love has been able to have with his gunslinger mentality. He needs to get there if he's going to be any kind of productive. For now, he's not, and the Titans are at 27. 26, the Jets, another team that was idle this week on a bye. This time, though, they just continue to crumble. Reports were that Aaron Rodgers wanted to come back in 2025, and the regime did not want him back. He goes out on the Pat McAfee show today and says, hey, I'm not sure if I want to come back in 2025. We'll have to find out. And he says he wants to play for the Jets if he does play at all. That's going to be a huge factor for them. This was a team that was built to win now, and they're not doing it. So obviously this year can be categorized as an absolute failure. Not many positives. They went all in, and now they're near the bottom of the league. They don't have that much of a future. They don't have too many draft picks if in the situation where it all goes wrong. Now, do I think it's the worst thing in the world for Aaron Rodgers to retire next season? Probably not. I do think he still has something left in the tank. I don't know what's going on with him this year, but I think if he dedicates himself to football in the offseason, kind of, stops being that in the spotlight, go do crazy things in the offseason kind of guy and gets back, he'll be fine. I don't know if he should retire. I don't know if that's best for the Jets. That's something he needs to figure out on his own. I still think he's got a little bit of juice left, but we'll see. I bet you the Jets don't take him back anyway. It's going to be a hard rebuild for them. We'll see what happens. At 25, we have the Chicago Bears, a third straight brutal loss for the Bears. Caleb Williams playing incredible ball right now. I am a huge fan of Caleb Williams. I know we keep making these huge sweeping takes about Caleb Williams, but he continues to play great football since Shane Waldron has been gone. This is not his fault. The Bears defense seemingly has fallen off of a cliff. Their morale is gone, and it happens. We see that happen a lot with bad teams with good defenses, right? It starts off great. The defense is flying around. They're making all the tackles, making all the plays, and then they just can't do it anymore. It's so high effort, so high energy, and if you're going to do that for a team that's losing, a team that's just not getting it done, it happens seemingly at least once a season with one of these teams, and it just happens to be the Bears this year. There are plenty of positives, but as long as Matt Eberflus is there, as long as they have that same coaching staff, it's just not going to be it. They need to get out of there. The Chicago Bears are at 25. 24, it's the Colts. This is a team that I'm really high on, but you also have to admit they have the issues, right? Anthony Richardson, after coming off of one of his best games, maybe his best game of his entire career in last week, he goes out there and has another stinker. A classic Anthony Richardson game, 50% from the 50% completion percentage. He gets it. He doesn't quite get it done on the ground the way that you need him to, and they don't get into the end zone at all. That's just what you're going to get. That Colts offense is broken. They need to get some consistency. The defense for the Colts actually stepped up against a Lions team that will run the ball down your throat. Obviously, the Colts had one of the worst rushing defenses at the beginning of the season. I'm not saying it was great, but it was much improved, and I was impressed by how their performance went in this game. Still, a bad loss for them. The offense needs to get some kind of consistency. At 23, we have the Panthers. Speaking of offensive consistency, they've started to find it. How about Bryce Young? Bryce Young played maybe his best game as a pro this year against one of the best defenses in the entire league. The Carolina Panthers obviously are not a good team. And maybe I have inflated their rank a little too high, but they've got some momentum. They won 2 straight games, and then they nearly knock off the 2-time defending Super Bowl champions. That is a huge game for them, a huge game for Bryce Young, and I think he's starting to figure this offense out. He's getting more comfortable, more confident. The way he looked in the pocket avoiding pressure was huge for this game for the Carolina Panthers. I need to see more of that out of them. They're still hanging out in the 20s. Still not a huge fan of this team, but I love what Chuba Hubbard's been able to put together. I like some of the young weapons they've got. I hope Jatavion Sanders is okay. All reports are that he is. He took a scary injury landing on top of his head after getting flipped out of bounds. But the Carolina Panthers and Bryce Young continue to improve on what is a dead season, but a dead season that had no expectations to begin with. So they're doing what they need to. They're showing improvement, and I think it's a huge day for the Carolina Panthers, regardless of the outcome. At 22, we have the Cleveland Browns, a huge win in a snow game for them against the division rival Pittsburgh Steelers. That's now 4 out of 5 games in a row where they have beaten the Pittsburgh Steelers in Cleveland. That is huge for them. That's not something that they're used to having. The Steelers generally beat the Browns by a lot, but a snow game, Nick Chubb gets in the end zone twice. Good to see him back out there. He's still not all the way back to where he was pre-injury, but he'll get those efficiency numbers up. It's not easy to do it against the Steelers defense. Glad to see he gets in the end zone twice. Jameis Winston had a great game. He really did. He put together a huge performance in the snow. Not easy to do. Led a couple huge drives. All the offense kind of came as the snowfall became more heavy. It was a huge game for the Browns. Again, a season that's kind of lost. They're not going to make the playoffs. They're not. They're not going to make any noise. They're not going to be bad enough that they're going to get a super high pick in the draft. But there is some hope in Cleveland, and you can see it start to take form. You can see them starting to build something when they have a quarterback that they like, that they want to play with, and when they get the run game going a little bit. This is a team that can be dangerous at times. At 21, we have the Saints. Obviously, they took down the Browns last time we saw them. They were on bye this week, so we didn't get anything new from them. But still, this is a Saints team that's been really good under interim head coach Darren Rizzi, 2-0. They continue to win football games. A team that I had proclaimed dead in the water, to be sent to the bottom of the league, the abyss, if you will, cap purgatory. They would be stuck there forever, and now they're seemingly going to find a way to win a couple games. And don't look now, but they're not out of that division race. Right now, they're just 2 games back of the Atlanta Falcons, 1 game back of the Bucs. This is not something that is over. They beat the Falcons already. They can come back and win this division, and it would be maybe the most New Orleans Saints thing ever to do to win this division after the way their season went, losing 7 straight games. It would be the most Saints thing ever. We will see, though. Saints at 21. At number 20, it is the Cincinnati Bengals, another team on a bye from last week. The Cincinnati Bengals, again, the problem is their defense. If their defense was even league average, if their defense was the 16th best defense in the league, they would probably have a reversed record. They would probably be 7-4 right now, maybe even better, as opposed to 4-7. Instead, you have MVP level plays from Joe Burrow, Offensive Player of the Year level plays from Jamar Chase, Defensive Player of the Year level plays from Trey Hendrickson, and yet they're not going to make the playoffs. Maybe they can go on a run. Maybe they can find a way for that defense to be better after this bye week, but they're going to need to go on quite the run, and they probably can't lose a game for the rest of the year. We'll see, though. It's going to be tough for the Bengals. They're at 20. At 19, it's the Falcons. This is a team that I want to believe in. I really do want to believe in this Falcons team. They're just way too inconsistent. You want to talk about teams that will show you a Super Bowl kind of contending effort one day. Maybe you see the Falcons against the Buccaneers. Then they show up and put a stinker up against the Broncos and the Saints the week before. They just don't seem to have it right now, and I don't know what it is. I don't know why they can't be consistently good on both offense and defense. That defense especially is really concerning. The defense never really has been that good. The offense is just inconsistent. They don't get any pressure on the quarterback. The secondary is not good enough to hold up. They leave wide open gaps. They just get torched through the air, picked apart. It's just not fair. This is not a great Falcons team. They had very high expectations, really. They're not living up to it. They're at number 19. At 18, it's the Commanders. And again, like I said, this is probably where it started to get hard for me. Spots 18-7. It was really hard. That 10-team stretch, I had a lot of trouble with the exact order. The Commanders at 18 honestly does feel a little low, but they've lost 3 straight games. And I understand it's 2 pretty solid teams. The Steelers, the Eagles, the Cowboys in there as well. 2 division games and a good Steelers team, but still, that's 3 straight losses. And I know the narrative with Cliff Kingsbury over there in that offense, but also just the defense is coming back down to earth, right? When they were in their win streak, when they were winning these games against, granted, kind of inferior competition, which is a good thing, you got to win those games. The defense was really stepping up and they were climbing up the ranks. But as I've been saying this whole time, as everyone knew coming into the season, that Commanders defense, especially that Commanders secondary, just isn't it. They go and they make that big trade for Marshawn Lattimore 3 weeks ago at this point. He has yet to see the field in a Washington uniform. I don't know when that's going to happen. That should really shore up their defense, and it's just not happened yet. He needs to come out there, and that might turn their season around. But for now, they're going to continue to fall. They're down to 18. And at 17, we have the Bucs. Big win in MetLife Stadium against a deflated and dead Giants team. Baker Mayfield does his thing. Bucky Irving goes for career-long yards. This is just a Bucs team that is not going to give up, and it's a fun team to watch. They love playing football. That's the vibes you get from them, and that is a very important quality to have in an NFL football team. As long as you're having fun, you're immediately going to be better out there, and the Bucs are just a fun team to watch. They get Mike Evans back. That is huge for them. He didn't have a great game, but that's because they kind of relied on the run game more than the passing game in this one. Still, though, the Bucs get a huge victory at a game. They're only 1 game back of those Atlanta Falcons right now, and I think they are the favorites to win that division, at least right now. The way that they're playing ball, they're the best in the NFC South. But let me know what you think of the first half. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we turn our attention to the second half of the NFL Power Rankings, 16-1, coming up next here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign. I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on their fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient, hoping one day I'll blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing sold out shows where 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown, get in my way and to be put down. It ain't your place, all this my town. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the noose it fits. Some losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Tuesday, November 26th. If you are just tuning in, we just went over the first half of the NFL Power Rankings, 32-17. In this segment, we finish off our NFL Power Rankings, starting at 16, getting all the way down to the best team in the NFL. But before we get into that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you were on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Tuesday, November 26th. But like I was saying, getting back into the NFL Power Rankings here at number 16, we have the Los Angeles Rams. The Rams have taken a couple of tough losses recently to the Dolphins. Sandwiched in between them is a win against the Patriots. Tough loss to the Dolphins. Tough loss against the Eagles. Now, that defense was shown Saquon Barkley, and you can blame them for that. I personally am not going to put too much stock in that. I know it's not great, but the fact that they were even kind of able to keep pace for most of that game, a couple long touchdowns, it's not going to happen every game. Saquon Barkley is a special player, and that the way that those Eagles are playing, it is tough for anybody to keep pace with them right now. Still not a great performance. They lose a couple of spots from last week's ranking, but still, this is a Rams team that if they can get hot, they still have a shot to make the playoffs. And if they can win a couple of games, they're not a team that I happily want to face in the playoffs. Dangerous, but I do understand the concern there. Maybe they fall a little bit after giving 300 yards up of scrimmage to Saquon Barkley. At number 15, we have the San Francisco 49ers. A pretty steep fall for them. I didn't want to punish them too hard because they did have a backup quarterback in, but, even with Brock Purdy, this is a team that was very disappointing. They're sitting at 500, currently tied for third in their division with those Rams, and it's just not a good look. The defense is not playing the same level of ball, and the most important thing, the most obvious thing is the offense. Sure, they've lost a couple of pieces, but overall, it's basically the same. Injuries are hurting this team, and I'm going to take that as a caveat. Of course, it's a big thing. Of course, it's a big deal. But this is still a San Francisco 49ers team that feels like they're this close to being a top 5 team in the NFL. They just can't quite get there. And I don't know what the issue is, but everything just feels slightly off with this team this year. They just kind of need a hard reset. I bet you it was because of the offseason. They had the most tumultuous offseason of any team because of the whole Brandon Ayuk saga, and I think that really threw them off. We'll see what happens. For now, the San Francisco 49ers are at 15. 14 goes to the Cardinals. The Cardinals take a tough loss. Their defense still played really good football. They only allowed 10 points defensively. A defensive touchdown a defensive touchdown for the Seattle Seahawks last week. Still a huge game, a bad game for the offense. And this is the issue with the Cardinals. It's not what you expect. The defense continues to play great under head coach Gannon over there. They continue to play really good. They hold their opponents to under 20 points. You should win that game as an NFL team. Unfortunately, Kyler Murray just can't seem to find any kind of connection with Marvin Harrison Jr. That was supposed to make that offense go. James Conner has been consistent, but consistent not really enough to win football games. He's not going to be that game changer kind of back. And if he's a guy that you want to rely on, he's just not going to be able to do that right now. You need Kyler Murray to be able to make those plays. And more importantly, you need, and when I say need, I mean need, Marvin Harrison Jr. to get more involved in this offense in any kind of meaningful way. It's not happening right now, and that is the biggest issue with this Cardinals team. They need to find a way to get that fixed because he's a great talent wide receiver, and I feel like they're kind of wasting him right now. I don't know why he and Kyler Murray can't get on the same page, but for whatever reason, it's not working. At 13, we have those Seahawks, fresh off a win against the Arizona Cardinals. Their defense is really the reason why I moved them up so far in this rankings. Their defense has been amazing ever since they added Ernest Jones. Ernest Jones, a guy that was traded to the Titans and then traded over to the Seahawks. They've completely revamped their linebacker core. They've replaced two of their starting linebackers in the last 3 weeks, and that has been that was their weakest point defensively. They have completely overhauled it, and now that defense is playing with a strength there. This is a defense that has completely turned it around. They're playing like they were in the first month of the season, and if they can continue to play like this, they're first place in that division right now. They might end up taking it. They're currently the third seed in the NFC right now. It's kind of crazy, but we'll see what happens. The Seahawks are at 13. At 12, we have the Houston Texans. I have many gripes about this Houston Texans team, especially with the offense. The offensive line, terrible. CJ Stroud has taken a huge step back. He's having a sophomore slump, and the offense is just not the same. But all of that being said, this is still a really good Texans squad. There's still plenty of bright lights here, and injuries are an issue, but that defense played a really good game. You can blame them for giving up 30 points. That's too many points for your team to consistently win, but the pressure they're able to get on quarterbacks week in and week out, especially in this game, is really impressive. And the way their secondary just continues to be opportunistic is great, but that offense needs to be able to keep up. This is a Texans team that's extremely disappointing, and I really considered them dropping them a lot further than they are right now. But they're going to stay just inside the top 15 at the top 12. Houston Texans. I'm still very worried about this team, though. 11, we have the Dolphins. Look at them climbing their way all the way back to the top. They were in the 20s, in the mid-20s before Tua came back. He has a huge game, his best game since coming back, and he has been near flawless. I'd like to see them get the ball to Tyreek Hill a little more, but I have very little issues with the way this team is playing. They get another win, another impressive win, this time against a division rival. Granted, it was the Patriots, but still a very impressive win for them. And the Dolphins, their offense is rolling. If they can continue to play like this, we start to see all the upside that was there at the beginning of the season. The reason why people thought they would go and win a lot of football games. They can still run the table. It's going to be a tough schedule, but I think they can still do it. Miami Dolphins at 11. Getting into the top 10, and our first time ever for the Denver Broncos in the top 10 of this show. The Denver Broncos have just been playing great football. That defense, one of the best in all of the sport. And Bo Nix has just continued to get better. I know his last 2 games were against some pretty bad defenses, against the Falcons and the Raiders. But still, winning those games that are on your schedule that you're supposed to win are the mark of a good team. I can't emphasize that enough. They do their job. They win their game. Other teams, like the Texans, for instance, were unable to do that. Like the Commanders, were unable to do that. The Broncos went out, they did their job, and Bo Nix is improving. That's all I can say about them. They continue to play good football. I'm not fully bought into this team, but there's a lot of young talent, and I can see why they would be a dangerous team. I'm just not fully bought in yet. Broncos at 10. At number 9, we have the Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings get in back into the top 10 for the first time in 3 weeks. The Minnesota Vikings had gone on a little bit of a struggle right there with two bad teams, only scoring 12 points against the Jacksonville Jaguars, almost losing another tight game 2 weeks ago. This is a Minnesota Vikings team that, against the Bears, showed me a lot. Sam Darnold played like he was in the beginning of the season again, something that I was definitely worried about, something that you don't generally see Sam Darnold coming back. Still, that special teams, they get a blocked field goal, recover a muffed punt. That was a huge win in overtime. They get the stop defensively after losing the coin toss, which we don't see that often. Minnesota Vikings back in the top 10, 9-2 right now. I'm not sure if they're real Super Bowl contenders, but in a weak NFC, maybe they could get lucky, win a game or two against some of those top contenders, and find a way to represent the NFC in the Super Bowl. We'll see. At number 8, we have the Chargers. A tough loss on Monday Night Football last night. It sucks, right? This is a Chargers team that is just so close to being a great team in the NFL. They're so close to being there. They're just not quite ready. Justin Herbert continues to do his Justin Herbert things. I love Justin Herbert. I think he's a top 5 quarterback in this league. It sucks to see J.K. Dobbins go down again. Fingers crossed he will be okay. The defense for the second straight week against a high-powered offense has just not been able to contain them. They did a good job for the first half, at least for most of the first half, until that final drive where they went for it on 4th and inches from their own 16-yard line, which may be the most gutsy play call I've ever seen in my entire life there. It worked out. It was a great drive, and that kind of turned the tide. The Chargers were never really able to get the momentum back. They tried to keep it even, but against a Ravens defense that's been getting better, they just weren't able to do it. Quentin Johnson drops a lot of balls, and that was jarring. He dropped a couple touchdowns. Justin Herbert just barely missed Josh Palmer on a couple of touchdowns that could have really changed the course of the game. Chargers are still a very good team, and I think they will make the playoffs, but this is a Chargers team that definitely has its flaws and doesn't feel like it's quite ready to be a contender yet. At number 7, we have the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers come in, get a loss in a snow game, divisional game on the road. I'm not going to punish them too hard for that. We all had a feeling this was going to happen, right? They had to get into their traditional trap game at some point. Coming off of a big win against the Ravens, they go down and take on the Browns, and it just doesn't work out. Russell Wilson, not super consistent. He continues to get worse and worse every single week. They fall a spot here. This is a Pittsburgh Steelers team that I still think will make the playoffs. They're still in front of the Ravens in that division race, but they have a brutal schedule coming up. They have to play everyone in their division. They still have 4 more division games to go. Not going to be easy. Steelers at 7. 6 is the Packers. Packers went out there and they showed you against a supposedly healthier 49ers defense. They absolutely put on a rout. You want to talk about running back performances? How about Josh Jacobs? 3 touchdowns in that game. A huge performance for him. Not something that you usually see out of Josh Jacobs and this Packers team. They're figuring it out. Jordan Love still needs to cut down on his turnovers. It's a thing. It's going to happen. But a blowout win against a for sure hobbled 49ers team. But that offense showed me a lot. That defense too, even if it is a backup quarterback, you got to win the games you're supposed to win, and they did more than that. A huge win for the huge win for the Packers. They get back on track. They're at number 6. And number 5, it's the Ravens. Speaking of getting back on track, a huge win on Monday Night Football, right? In the Harbaugh Bowl, they pull through. Lamar Jackson, incredible football player, right? He's just very special. Derrick Henry doesn't get into the end zone and they still find a way to win the game. I'd like to see him incorporated more into the game plan, especially early in the game, because they kind of struggled a little bit offensively. They were able to figure it out, hit a deep shot to Rashad Bateman, and that kind of opened everything up for them. They went on a little run there in the second half where until their second to last drive, where they were just running clock, they dominated. They weren't able to get stopped. Touchdown, field goal, touchdown, right? They took the lead, got to 30 points. Just an absolute dominant performance for them. The defense is getting better, and I think the Ravens are very clearly a top 5 team in the NFL. At 4, it's the Kansas City Chiefs. Another tough game for them. They just can't seem to get away from these close games, and they're starting to feel a little bit like the Minnesota Vikings of 2022. And maybe that's unfair of me to say. Maybe it is. Maybe this is a team that's different, but that defense is really good, right? That offense just continues to not be able to pull away from other teams. I don't know what it is. They were kind of like this last season where they weren't winning convincingly, but it's very concerning for the Chiefs that they keep making it this close against teams they should beat. And maybe they're just not trying yet, but you don't want to get into that habit because when you have to turn on the switch, if you don't have the juice to turn it on, you're going to get caught with your pants down. And I'm worried that's going to happen to the Chiefs right now. The Bills at 3. They were on a bye this week, coming off of their biggest win of the season against those Kansas City Chiefs. Go celebrate a little more. The Bills are a very good football team. For my money, the best team in the AFC right now, second in the standings. But still, they haven't clinched a playoff spot. They still have a job to do. They still haven't even clinched their division. Some wild stuff can happen. They have to go out there and they can't let a huge win and then a letdown week the next week. They need to go out there, do their job, and I'm not worried about them. Josh Allen, an MVP candidate. We will see what happens. For now, the Bills at number 3. At number 2, how about the Philadelphia Eagles? Saquon Barkley, 302 total scrimmage yards for him. He goes off, a career day for him, a franchise historic day as well. He is now on pace to break both the scrimmage yards record in a season and the rushing record in a season. He has an extra game. Those records were going to fall eventually. But what he's been able to do since leaving the Giants is nothing short of incredible. He's a great football player, and the Eagles, as long as Jalen Hurts continues to play clean football like he has since the bye week, they are a very scary team, arguably the best in the NFL. I almost put them at the top, but I couldn't quite do it. Because at number 1, it's the Lions. The Lions, I just could not quite dethrone. I think if you go position by position for the Lions versus the Eagles, I think the Eagles win every battle. I think Jared Goff is a worse quarterback than Jalen Hurts. I think Saquon Barkley is a better running back, even if you put both Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs together. I think the wide receivers for the Eagles are better than the wide receivers for the Lions. Offensive line for the Eagles, I think, is better, although that's definitely comparable. And the defense, I think, for the Eagles is slightly better, even though that is comparable. The reason I have the Lions up top, and even though I went through all that and said Eagles, 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 is because of coaching. And I've harped on Nick Sirianni a lot when we've talked about the Eagles this year, but I have not harped on Dan Campbell a single time. Dan Campbell makes those rash decisions. He makes those aggressive decisions, but he does it at the right times. He does it when he knows it'll work, and even when it doesn't put his teams in holes like a lot of Nick Sirianni's crazy decisions do. There's a balance to it. Nick Sirianni hasn't quite figured out, and because of that, the Lions are my number 1 team. It comes down to coaching. Coaching in the NFL is a huge thing, as we see with some of these teams at the bottom. They're having issues with their coaches. They should be fired. Blah, blah, blah. For now, Lions at number 1. But let me know what you think. We'll run through the top 10 real quick. At number 10, the Denver Broncos. 9, the Vikings. 8, the Chargers. 7, the Steelers. 6, the Packers. 5, the Ravens. 4, the Chiefs. 3, the Bills. 2, the Eagles. And 1, the Lions. Let me know what you think. Love to hear your thoughts on anything in this list. Who was I the most wrong on? Who was I the most right on? Let me hear your top 10. We're going to take a quick break here. When we come back, we turn our attention to winners and losers from this week. Another wild week in the NFL. We just went over the power rankings, but now we need to talk about week 12 and the recap. Winners, losers, coming up next here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube. Absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Tuesday, November 26th. If you are just tuning in, we just finished going over the NFL Power Rankings 32-1. Pretty good power rankings, if I do say so myself. In this segment, we turn our attention to Week 12. Winners and losers from the last week of NFL football. It was another crazy week. Lots of upsets, lots of awful things happening, lots of great things happening, records being broken as well. We'll talk about all of that and more in just a second. But before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Tuesday, November 26th. But like I was saying, in this segment, we're going to get into the winners and losers. We're going to start off with the winners. As all good things, we're going to start off with the good news. Top 5 winners of the week. And we're going to start a little bit simple here. At number 5, it's Bryce Young. How about Bryce Young? How about his performance? What he was able to do against, in my opinion, one of the best defenses in all of the National Football League, keeping the Panthers close. He just had his best game of his career. And for all the people, me included, that thought his career was over once he was benched for Andy Dalton, he comes in, gets his second opportunity of the season, and he has done nothing short but absolutely revive his career. He has been awesome. He has shown that under Dave Canales, in the new regime, as he continues to get more and more comfortable with that offense, that Bryce Young deserves another shot, deserves at least one more year, and it's not time to move off. It's an important lesson, right? We're kind of seeing the same thing with Will Levis to a lesser extent. I'm not willing to make any big judgments, and I'm not saying that Bryce Young really is 100% back, but it's a lesson that we are really quick to react, right? We called Bryce Young a bust. And sure, maybe in terms of first overall picks, he could still be considered a bust. And I wouldn't really even be mad at you for still considering him a bust. But still, this guy has not even played 2 seasons in the NFL. He is still figuring it out. He has had multiple now quarterback multiple coordinators in his season, and it is absolutely messing with him. Right? He's starting to figure it out, get in the system, get it more comfortable, and you see him improve. It's really important not to overreact. And that's hard. It's a hard lesson to take because everything is snappy now. You know, you got to talk about it now, otherwise it's going to be lost forever. And I'm guilty of that as much as anybody else. Recency bias is a thing. But what Bryce Young has shown me this week, and really in the last couple of weeks, his last 3 games total since coming back as the starter, it has showed me that he is a guy, he is a quarterback that I think deserves another shot, and that is huge for his career. Bryce Young is the number 5 winner of the week. Staying along those same lines, how about our number 4 winner of the week, Tua Tagovailoa? Tua goes out there, his first 4 touchdown performance since getting another concussion. And I, along with a lot of other people, were very concerned for Tua's health. Since coming back, he has thrown 1 interception to 11 touchdowns, right? He has played incredible football every single week, and that Miami Dolphins team, you can immediately see the improvement with and without him, right? Even in this game, they bench Tua for a little bit to get Skylar Thompson in there. He immediately throws an interception. This team is night and day better with Tua than without him. And it's huge to see him out there playing great football, playing back up to where the Dolphins are starting to get back to the expectations they are. Again, we just went over the power rankings. I had them at 11 in the beginning of the season. They had risen all the way up to 6, right? So they're getting back to where at least I expected them to be at the beginning of the season, and that's because of Tua, what he's been able to do. As long as he stays healthy, the Dolphins are going to be a good team and a tough one to take out. Tua is the number 4 winner of the week. At number 3, Keep it nice and simple. How about snow games, guys? We got another snow game. It's been a very, very long time on Thursday Night Football. Getting all the way back there seems like a week ago, seems like a long time ago, but it was part of this week. A fun game. Jameis Winston goes out there and balls, gives the Cleveland Browns some new life. Shout out to the Cleveland fans over there for sticking it out. Tough environment to play in. They do what they need to do, win a game against a division opponent, a division rival. Everything in the AFC North, all of those division games seem to mean more to those teams than a lot of other division rivalries. So it's fun to see. It's a fun game to watch. Snow games are great. They're our number 3 winner. At number 2, shout out to the Cowboys special teams. They are just the 4th team in the history of the NFL. In the history of the NFL, to have 2 different players return a kick for a touchdown. Not only that, they did it in the 4th quarter, both of them in the 4th quarter. How about that finish to that game? Turpin goes out there after the Commanders go up and tie the game, scores a kick return touchdown after muffing the punt. A little spin move there immediately down the field. That was a huge moment for them. Got the Cowboys back in front. But then the Commanders answer, of course. Terry McLaurin, an 80-yard touchdown, a crazy touchdown, cuts in, jukes defenders, goes all the way down the field. And then an onside kick try that could have ended the game after an Austin Siebert missed extra point. Instead, they take it to the house, which probably was a mistake, but that gets them on the list here. Lots of other teams have struggled with special teams, and Cowboys aren't the exception here. They've had their struggles with special teams, and especially this week, special teams were a real mess. We had more blocked field goals, more missed extra points. All of that happened this week, but the Cowboys special teams stepped up huge. They played a huge role in that game, 12 points out of their 34, and the Cowboys definitely don't win this game if not for those special teams. So shout out to the special teams of the Cowboys. They were huge, and it's the number 2 winner of the week. And the number 1 winner of the week, the winningest winner of really the whole season so far, or really any week, it's Saquon Barkley. How can you not? Saquon Barkley, 255 yards rushing. Saquon Barkley, 302 total yards from scrimmage. That is insane. 2 70-plus yard touchdown runs. He is on an insane pace right now. I mentioned it in the power rankings, but Saquon Barkley on pace for the most scrimmage yards in the history of the NFL. On pace for the most rushing yards in the history of the NFL. Saquon Barkley now in the MVP conversation. And Saquon Barkley, really running backs as a whole, I would say, are getting into the winner's circle here. But Saquon Barkley headlining it all. He's already set a career high for rushing yards, career high for rushing touchdowns in a season. He is insane, and we get to see what he can do behind a good offensive line finally. It's fun to watch. This is the player we were promised that went 2nd overall in the NFL draft. Saquon Barkley is a special, special talent, and he deserves to be let free. He's the biggest winner of the week. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we get over to the losers' side of things. Just as high as the highs were, there were plenty of lows. So we'll talk about all of that and more coming up in just a second here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. Today is Tuesday, November 26th. If you are just tuning in, we just finished going over the winners of the last week in the NFL. We get to the other side of the coin, the bad side, the lowest of the lows, the 5 biggest losers of the week this week, coming up in just a second. But before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Or if you are on YouTube, you can use that super chat feature. If you do either of those two things, a message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you do have a burning question about sports, anything at all that you would like to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments. Throw it in the chat. I will get to it as soon as I possibly can. I appreciate everybody so much for sticking around, talking some sports with me here on a beautiful Tuesday, November 26th. But like I was saying, we are going to finish up our show here today, getting in with the losers from last week in the NFL, starting off, as we always do, at number 5. And we're going to put a spotlight on a receiver here that has had his struggles. A second-year receiver for the Los Angeles Chargers, Quentin Johnston, our 5th loser of the week. And this is a guy that, at the beginning of this season, was considered a joke, right? He had a really bad rookie season after being drafted in the first round out of TCU. He came in this season, caught a couple of touchdowns, had a couple of big weeks, and now that he's being relied upon a little bit more as a guy that you can rely on, and the Chargers needed him to step up big in this game against the Ravens, he is now in his last 11 targets, 0 for, no catches. 3 drops in this game against the Baltimore Ravens, and a couple of those drops would have been huge plays, potential touchdowns, running away from defenders on drag routes, a nice, easy connection that, in all honesty, if I had that space, I probably could have made that catch. Now, I'm not out there. I wouldn't have been able to get that space. But it's a catch that you have to make if you're an NFL wide receiver. And this is something that has really plagued Quentin Johnston for a while. It sucks that a young player is not catching these balls, but at wide receiver, you have to make those catches. He has the skill. We've seen it a couple times this year that he is a guy that you can believe in. This is a guy that you can put out there and a guy that can make some of those plays, but on the last 11 targets, no catches. And it's very disappointing for the Chargers because he was starting to put together a pretty nice sophomore season. He's our number 5 loser of the week. And number 4, it's the San Francisco 49ers as a team. Absolutely blown out against a Green Bay Packers team that you have a pseudo rivalry against. They're a team that you've met a lot in the playoffs. The Packers have been utterly dominated in those matchups in the playoffs, but you come in injured. And I know that's not a forgive all excuse, right? That's not something that you can just throw out there and say, oh, we were injured, it's fine, leave us alone, right? But it's also something that you have to be a little bit concerned about. It's something that when you take a look at it, it is part of your story, right? And that's why they're the number 4 loser. They played awfully, right? And I can't blame their offense completely, but the addition of Christian McCaffrey, I thought was going to make a huge difference. I thought they were going to be able to rely on the ground game. The Packers have been a team that you've been able to run the football against. They were just unable to get it done. Stacked boxes. They couldn't throw the football, make any kind of threat with Brandon Allen back there. They need a new backup quarterback. Honestly, I think Daniel Jones might be a guy that they should go out and get if Brock Purdy is going to miss any more time. Even if he isn't. If he ever goes down, I don't think you want Brandon Allen in a playoff game, and you probably don't want Daniel Jones either. But he is a guy that has moments. He's a guy that already you've seen this season can come out there, win a game against a good Seattle Seahawks team. He has a game or two in him, and you just have to hope it's at the right time. But for now, the 49ers are big losers. They looked absolutely awful against those Packers this week. At number 3, our number 3 biggest loser, it's the Las Vegas Raiders. They have now gambled and lost on 2 straight quarterbacks, right? They are just not getting it done, right? Jimmy Garoppolo last season, not working. Aiden O'Connell gets hurt. Now, Gardner Minshew goes down. You have Desmond Ridder as a new quarterback option. Maybe you get Aiden O'Connell back, but still, those aren't super inspiring options. You need to draft a quarterback this year. They continue to lose football games. They continue to lose players. It's just not everything is not going well in the Sin City right now, and the Raiders are our 3rd biggest loser of the week. At number 2, it's CJ Stroud, and this is less about this week. Now, it is about this week. He pulled, I'm going to call it a half Dan Orlovsky here, running out of the back of his own end zone. It's a little different. He was under pressure trying to make a play in the final couple drives of this game, but he has just not looked like himself this season. What CJ Stroud did last season was incredible, arguably the best rookie season of all time from a quarterback, and sophomore slumps are a thing. Teams start to figure you out, you slow it down a little bit, but they have just about the same team. The offensive line is terrible, but the offensive line wasn't much good last year. The running game, and without Stephon Diggs, the weapons haven't changed. You're seeing how much of a difference it's actually making. Stephon Diggs, if he is healthy enough, should get a big contract in the offseason with someone. I never really understood why they decided to slash the last 3 years off of his contract there. Just something that I guess they had to do, but CJ Stroud has taken a big step back this year. A huge drop in just about every metric. Interceptions way up from last season. He needs to figure it out. I'm still not hitting the panic button on them yet. They're still in control in that division. The Colts continue to fumble around with the ball with themselves. And until the Colts get everything together, they're not really in danger of missing the playoffs. But this is a team that just is not going to come into the playoffs with a lot of momentum like they did last season. And I'm not too convinced with the way that this team is going. For now, CJ Stroud, the number 2 loser. And that leaves us with number 1, the biggest loser of the week. It's the New York Giants. They're the team that's been piled on mercilessly. They're the team that let Saquon Barkley walk 302 yards this week. They're the team that let Xavier McKinney walk an interception to add to, I believe, his league-leading tally. I think that Xavier McKinney was the bigger loss, right? But it's not just them, not just the 2 big guys that they lost this offseason. Leonard Williams, 2.5 sacks this week. They trade him to Seattle at the trade deadline of last season. Julian Love, another safety. They let him walk. He's having a great day over in Seattle, right? There are plenty of former Giants all around the league killing it, and this is a Giants team that cannot get anything together, right? And it's not all on them. They don't have a quarterback. Tommy DeVito, while he's a fun story, while he's a guy that's fun to watch play, and he's got all the vibes that you want out of a backup quarterback, just a fun guy kind of quarterback, right? He's not going to come in and win you games, right? And that's not what they expect him to do. They don't expect him to do that. They don't expect him to, turn this season around. But this is a Giants team that needed something. And right now they've got nothing. It seems like every decision that they've made in the past 10 years has been the wrong one, regardless of what it was. They have barely made any great decisions, and it's just continuing to compound. It just happened that everything that they let walk had a good week this week, and they had an atrocious one. They're the biggest losers of the week. But let me know what you think. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this week's losers, winners. Let me know. And thank you, everybody, so much for tuning in to today's episode of Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I've been your host, Jeremy Lapidus. We will be back tomorrow. We're off Thanksgiving, and I will be back on Friday, but we're off Thanksgiving. We'll be back tomorrow talking all the biggest news from this week in sports that we missed when we were covering the weekend, NBA power rankings as well. Make sure you come back for that. I'll see you then. You've been listening to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. You have a good one. Bye-bye.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet.